I would like you to play with me a game that I like to call Fact or Quack.
You do know that there is a very common term that begins with an F that is the opposite of fact. Is that one of the questions? What is a better word than quack to use in the name of this quiz?
The AI fix a digital zoo. Smart machines, what will they do? Flies to Mars or bake a bad cake? World domination, a silly mistake.
Hello, and welcome to episode 49 of the AI Fix, your weekly dive headfirst into the bizarre and sometimes mind-boggling world of artificial intelligence. My name is Graham Cluley.
And I'm Mark Stockley. And Graham, I thought we'd start off today with some Bosnian rock.
Your artificial intelligence will play the beat for me to dance.
Bosnian rock, eh? Is this their entry into Eurovision?
This delightful music comes courtesy of one of our lovely listeners, Nikola Trifonovic, who said,
Hello, I very much enjoy your podcast. Over the holidays, I finally had time to listen to all the episodes from March and April. Because one many topic that comes very often is they took our jobs. I thought to send you a song by a Bosnian band, Dubiosa Kolektiv, who predicted this 5 years ago.
Oh, well, they predicted that our jobs would be taken or that everybody's jobs would be taken. Maybe they predicted that their jobs would be taken because they're not very good. This is all very well, Mark, but there is another AI-related tune vying to be toppermost of the poppermost because I can reveal for the first time, to the delight of some of our listeners who've previously asked for it,
and promised to sing it in their car.
That's right, for carpool karaoke, the AI Fix theme tune is now available to stream online on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Deezer, you name it, it's up there. Links in the show notes. So if you've ever wondered what the mystery verses are in our tune, now you'll be able to find out. Give it a review and whatever other people do with music online these days.
Maybe listen to it.
Yes, just listen to it.
Tell your friends. What are you talking about on today's episode?
I'm going to be talking about the danger of digital fossils.
Oh, I'll be talking about the latest criminal misbehaviour using AI.
But first, the news.
Meta shares new open source protection tools for AI privacy and security.
Chinese car company is using humanoid robots as sales staff.
AI catches paedophile on the run for 27 years.
Agatha Christie dug up by the BBC.
OpenAI rolls back overly sycophantic GPT-4o.
Some interesting stories there. What's going on at Meta?
Meta has released an arsenal of open-source guardrails aimed at shoring up its llama models against attacks. You'll remember very recently it released its herd of llamas.
Yes.
There's 2 new versions out already and 2 in the works coming out soon. The new protection tools are themselves AIs, so it's a family of AIs protecting a family of AIs.
Oh, it's a bit like Who Watches the Watchers, but in this case, who's guarding the guards? It's llamas, is the answer. This is a strange world we're living in, isn't it?
Anyway, for anyone who's interested, the updated Llama Guard 4 does policy enforcement, a new version of Prompt Guard detects malicious prompts, and an all-new Llama firewall integrates Prompt Guard alongside other guardrails to stop bad things going in and bad things coming out of your AI.
Rather than call it a llama firewall, couldn't they have called it a llama electric fence? Wouldn't that have been better? They're really missing a few tricks here.
I felt like the problem there wasn't the word firewall so much as the word llama.
Now, do you remember when cars were sold in the old-fashioned way? What you'd do is you'd get some women in bikinis and you'd cover them in olive oil. They'd drape themselves over the bonnets of a car.
Right, yes.
And men would crowd round and purchase the car because they were stupid. Well, that's not the way things are done anymore. No. Chinese car maker Chery has decided...
Oh, let me guess. They've taken a robot, they've covered it in olive oil, and they've draped it on a car.
Well, I don't know if you've ever tried covering a robot with olive oil.
That's an experience we're all going to have at some point in the next 10 years.
But you're not far wrong, because they've decided their showrooms do need a humanoid robot salesperson, and they've called it AI Moga, which stands for artificial intelligence with multi-objective genetic algorithm.
That's one of those names where the name itself is such bullshit that they've clearly just constructed that to get back to the acronym that they want. But the acronym they want is AMOGA.
Well, that's the weird thing, is why do they want that acronym in the first place?
Exactly.
Maybe it means something in Chinese, I don't know. Anyway, these robots, they walk, they talk, they even respond in 10 different languages, all thanks to DeepSeek AI. So they've got DeepSeek AI plugged into them. As we know, DeepSeek AI, not renowned for its security.
Yeah, might blow up, might not.
Which won't be a problem at all in a car showroom, will it? These robots boast 41 degrees of freedom. Again, I'm not sure why they need that to be a salesperson. Maybe they need that to be a yoga instructor. But
that feels like quite a lot of freedom in China for some reason.
Unusual levels of freedom. And these robots, they've got silicon bionic faces, is what they say.
Literally nothing about the thing that you've described makes me want to go anywhere near this car dealership.
It may encourage you to jump in a car and drive away as fast as possible, of course. Maybe that's what they're thinking.
So Cheshire Police in the UK have revealed that they used face recognition software, which of course relies on AI, to catch a serial paedophile who'd been on the run for more than 27 years. So the BBC reports that Richard Burrows fled the UK in 1997. Last year, Cheshire Police, in desperation, turned to the controversial PimEyes face recognition software. You've probably heard of PimEyes if you work in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
I think that's the one that just hoovers up all the images on the public internet and does face recognition with them.
And it's extraordinary because it's not as simple as just doing a reverse image search. It will actually look at an image and say, oh, that looks like the same person as this person in these other images, which are scattered all across the internet. And it works really, really well.
Well, it worked really, really well in this case as well. So police entered a 1997-era mugshot of Burrows, and then PimEyes identified him in seconds from a photo taken at his retirement party in Thailand in 2019. So happy to say that 81-year-old Burrows has now been sentenced to 46 years in prison.
Now, Mark, you've heard the phrase, everyone has a book in them. That's what they say, don't they?
That sounds quite painful.
Yeah. In most cases, it's best if the book stays there, to be honest. But if you're a budding author...
I thought we were imagining different things there. I went back to my scout days, being taught first aid. You know, when you get stabbed, you leave the knife in and you put a ring bandage around it. Because if you pull it out, then there's lots of blood. That's not what you meant, is it?
No, that's not what I meant. But if you're a budding author...
Yeah.
You might need a bit of a helping hand.
What, to keep it in?
No. You might need a help to get your novel properly out. And who better to have as your tutor than Dame Agatha Christie, the creator of Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple, the very queen of crime herself.
Does she know where the book is? Does she know how it got in there in the first place? These are really important questions that need to be answered.
No, they're not, Mark.
Oh.
Now, she's been dead for 50 years.
Yeah.
But rather than let her rest in peace, her great-grandson has had no qualms at all about digging her up in the form of an AI-generated avatar. By the way, if anyone is at the moment in the year 2150 thinking of doing this, oh, you know what we'll do, great-granddad? Why don't we turn him into an AI avatar? Why don't we do that? Sod off. Anyway, this chap, he's teamed up with the BBC and they have produced a masterclass, they say, of 11 video lessons taught by an AI-generated Agatha Christie. And apparently it's all a very, very good idea and very ethical. And there's no problem whatsoever with it. I'm not so sure. Did you ever see those adverts on British TV where they tried to convince us to install smart meters into our homes? And what they did was they had Albert Einstein in the bath.
Oh. Hello. This is very impressive.
Telling us how he loved smart meters. And I thought, hang on, Albert Einstein is dead. They didn't just say, here's a crazy professor in a bath saying, get yourself a smart meter. They said, I'm Albert Einstein and you should install a smart meter. Similarly, I would be so annoyed if I was Agatha Christie, if words were being put into my mouth in order to fill up the pockets of my great-grandchildren. I think it's outrageous.
Do you know what I want to see? I want to see an AI-generated room with the AI Agatha Christie And then all of the people who may have been involved in this travesty sat on a sofa in front of her as she goes through one by one, explaining who is responsible for this monstrosity before she finally fingers the culprit. Graham, you've heard the phrase politeness costs nothing. You've probably heard it quite a lot, in fact.
Yes, I've been told that.
It turns out it's not true.
Oh.
So last week, do you remember you told us that users were complaining that OpenAI's GPT-4o was just too agreeable?
Yes.
A bit too cringingly sycophantic.
Really annoying.
And it was. And now it's gone.
Gone?
Yep. OpenAI has rolled back GPT-4o to an earlier, less sycophantic version and explained in a blog post what happened.
Oh.
So apparently the latest version included adjustments aimed at improving the model's personality. And the way the model behaves is shaped by some baseline principles, and then it's adjusted according to user feedback. And the user feedback comes from things like the little thumbs up and thumbs down icons on the ChatGPT interface. And OpenAI says that in its most recent update, it focused too much on short-term feedback, and as a result, GPT-4o skewed towards responses that were overly supportive but disingenuous. So basically, it's your fault, users.
Now, Mark, I've noticed something about you.
Oh, God.
I've noticed you like to present yourself as a bit of a smarty-pants.
Oh, that's not a persona, Graham.
I'll mention Dyson spheres, and you say, oh, yes, I know about those. In fact, I built one for my chickens.
Yeah.
I'll drop in a reference to the Maroxy bind, and you say, oh, the chess pawn structure named after the Hungarian grandmaster.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would have said.
I'll tell you I've read an interesting scientific paper about vegetative electron microscopy.
Yep.
And you'll say, oh, yeah, I wrote that. But I wonder, are you really as smart as you say you are?
I did once watch a 2-hour video about the process of insect olfaction. It's basically how do moths smell, which is really interesting.
Do they have no nose?
They don't have a nose. And the current explanation for how moths smell actually physically doesn't work. Like it can't, it's impossible for the current explanation to work.
Why do moths need to be able to smell?
Actually, maybe it was aphids.
That's how much attention you're paying.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wonder, are you really as smart as you say you are, or do you just have a rapid response AI up your sleeve, buzzing away to give you answers to any questions you might have?
We've all got AI in us, Graham. It's the modern version of having a book in us.
It's a bit like that chess grandmaster who was accused of having something in him, buzzing away, helping him when he played Magnus Carlsen. Anyway, I don't know if you have an AI at your fingertips or not, but if you do, take heed, and take heed, listeners, as well, because AIs, as we have learnt many times before on this podcast, are capable of making sometimes itsy-bitsy little colossal mistakes.
Yeah.
So they may now have learnt how many R's there are in the word strawberry.
Yeah.
Or how to draw the right number of fingers on a person's hand.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're infallible. And that has consequences for us as human beings, because increasingly we are relying on the information generated for us by AI. Now, I don't want to worry anyone. The good news is AI is only being used for unimportant stuff, right? Like judging whether a dog is hot or not, or naming sandwiches, or canvassing to be a city mayor, something like that. It's not important.
Yeah. Flying F-16 fighter jets.
You're wrong. You're wrong, Mark.
Oh.
AI is actually being used for very important stuff as well. It's not all classifying chickens' emotions in your backyard and creating motivational posters for slugs. It's not just that.
There is quite a lot of that, though.
Oh, there's a huge amount of that.
Yeah.
But it's also being used for science. Big science. Serious science. And you would think that scientific papers, the stuff that helps doctors cure diseases or sends rockets to space, that'd be pretty airtight, right? Not just the rockets to space, but the scientific papers, they would be pretty solid, right? And you would like to think that those papers would be written by smart people using smart words in order that we as a species can do smart things. But that is not always the case.
Oh.
Take, for instance, vegetative electron microscopy. Sounds important.
It does.
Sounds sciencey.
Very sciencey.
It's a super weird phrase that has been appearing in the papers of scientific researches. And unfortunately, vegetative electron microscopy means nothing. It's word salad.
Maybe it's so clever and so scientific, you just don't understand it, Graham.
Well, why don't you tell us what vegetative electron microscopy is then?
Is it electron microscopy that's sort of given up? It's having an off day. It's having a sofa day. It doesn't really fancy it today. That's what I think it is. It's not going to do any scanning.
This phrase keeps on showing up in science papers.
Yeah.
And some researchers at the University of Tübingen, that's in Germany, by the way, if you couldn't tell from my accent, they decided to play detective. They scanned millions of science papers.
Yeah.
And they kept seeing the same phrase. Vegetative. Let's see if I can say it. Vegetative.
They're not going to detect it on this podcast.
Vegetative electron microscopy kept on popping up.
Yep.
And after some investigation, they determined why that was happening. Vegetative electron microscopy is a glitch. It is a goof in the training data used by AI.
Oh.
And it's quite interesting as to why this happened. Well, I think it's interesting.
Well, we'll see.
There is one old paper, a science paper from 1959. And of course, that was just printed out. There wasn't an electronic version of it. And at some point, someone thought, I'm not going to type all that in. I'm going to scan it in.
Yeah.
And what happened was the words vegetative and electron microscopy got jammed together by accident. So imagine a scientific paper with two columns, right? You often see those, don't you? It was, there's the left side and there's right. Those very scientific, right? And in the left-hand column, the final word on one particular line was vegetative. And directly opposite on the right-hand column, there was a bit which started with electron microscopy.
Yeah.
And the digitizing process erroneously somehow combined vegetative from one column of text with electron from the other. And as a result, this phantom term was created. And this problem was compounded.
I've got a question about this.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So but it was just that combination of words. So presumably the two columns were exactly the same width apart all the way down.
I don't know if there was a fold in the paper. I linked to the story about this because they actually have a picture of this particular part of the science paper.
I've got to see this.
Let's have a look.
So looking at the picture...
There's no real reason why you'd think this would happen, but it did. And this appears to be patient zero.
See, why isn't Attack Norris littered throughout scientific literature?
Oh, there's a lot of Attack Norris. But the problem was compounded by the Farsi language. I don't know, how fluent are you in Farsi?
ببخشید من فارسی خیلی خوب نمیتونم حرف بزنم.
Have you just ordered a pizza? Now, as you know, Mark, in Farsi, the words for vegetative and scanning, they look very, very similar, don't they?
Do they?
They only differ by a single dot.
Oh.
And that's the difference between vegetative and scanning. And inevitably, this made-up term of vegetative electron microscopy rather than scanning electron microscopy, it was then really hardened into the knowledge base. It's just a fluke, really. It's like, oh, well, it must really exist.
Yeah.
And so this made-up term began to appear in serious scientific work. You could be reading a study about cancer treatment and stumble across a term that means about as much as quantum cheesecake. It's a case of the emperor's new clothes because you don't want to admit that you don't understand what quantum cheesecake or vegetative electron microscopy is. And so you go along with it.
Yeah.
And you believe it's real. And after a while, it becomes real because so many people believe that vegetative electron microscopy exists. And so as of today, vegetative electron microscopy, I'm really enjoying saying that each time, by the way, that appears, according to these researchers, in at least 22 scientific papers. And the point at which it began to appear more and more was in the 2020s, because when researchers began to use AI to help write their papers, the AI began making stuff up. And of course, it had learnt that the words often went together. And so it began to appear in real scientific journals. And so I wonder, quite frankly, Mark, where that leaves you, Mr. Farsi expert. Are you able to tell the difference between stuff AI has made up and real scientific terms? And to find out, I would like you to play with me a game that I like to call Fact or Quack. The quiz where I read out phrases from recent scientific publications and my co-host Mark Stockley has to guess whether the phrase is real peer-reviewed scientific terminology or complete techno-gibberish hallucinated by an AI.
You do know that there is a very common term that begins with an F that is generally considered to be the opposite of fact. Is that one of the questions? What is a better word than quack to use in the name of this quiz?
Right, you're already docked 1 point. You haven't shown enough respect to the quizmaster. Right, here is your first phrase. Phrase 1. Quantum-activated fungal telemetry. Is that real, or is it something ChatGPT dreamt up?
Quantum-activated fungal telemetry.
Yes, quantum-activated fungal telemetry.
You see, fungus, they do have, they're all joined together with mycelium and they talk to trees and things. There's absolutely something that could happen. It sounds made up. That's made up.
Well, if you'd said real, I'd have said congratulations.
Oh, I was so close to saying real.
Would you like to change your answer?
I think it's real, Graham.
Unfortunately, you're wrong, Mark. That one was made up. That one came straight out of a test prompt fed to a rogue language model by some guy on Reddit trying to fake a PhD proposal. So far, you're not doing too well. Currently, you're on about -3 points. Phrase 2.
Yeah.
Fact or quack? Quantum entanglement.
Oh, that's true.
Do you know what quantum entanglement is? For a bonus point.
Yeah, so it's the idea that two particles are... Basically, the state of one particle is...
You're good.
The state of one particle and the state of another particle are entangled. So no matter how far apart they are, if you change the state of one of them, the state of the other one changes instantaneously, so irrespective of distance.
So it could be on the opposite sides of the universe. You are absolutely right. Well done, Mark. Very good. And I think Einstein himself, when he wasn't recommending smart meters, would often talk about quantum entanglement. Right. Phrase 3. Brownian motion. Do you know what?
That's true.
Oh, he knows what Brownian motion is. What is Brownian motion, Mark?
So Brownian motion, I think, is the random movement of atoms.
Very good. The random movement of tiny particles suspended in fluid.
Yeah.
Like pollen grains in water. That is Brownian motion. Very, very good.
Because they're being bombarded randomly, I think.
I'm just impressed, Mark, that you didn't take the word motion and the adjective Brownian and make some really juvenile scatological joke. So well done for that. You get an extra point for that. All right. Next one.
Yeah.
Phrase 4. Counterfeit consciousness. Counterfeit consciousness. Is that fact or quack?
I'm going to say that's quack.
It is. This is an AI-generated term. This is a mistake that some AIs have made when rewriting articles. Rather than using the phrase artificial intelligence, they have instead referred to counterfeit consciousness. So there's been a number of times when that's been done. Typically, it's been done by paper mills, which are those entities that generate fraudulent scientific articles. And finally, Mark, I think you're going to come out ahead on the quiz overall. Fact or quack? Neuroplasticity in silicon carbon scaffolding. Is that fact or quack?
Neuroplasticity in silicon carbon scaffolding. So neuroplasticity is a thing, and I'm sure that silicon carbon scaffolding is a thing. This sounds like people making brains out of silicon and carbon. I'm going to say this is true.
It is real, and it's currently being weaponized by DARPA as we speak, I expect, as well. So, well done to you.
Yep.
Very good. You're a smarty-pants. But bad news for the AIs, which keep on making these guffs and including all kinds of bogus information in the science papers which they're reading. I think the fix for all of us, it's simple, but it's annoying. People need to actually read and understand what they're putting into research papers rather than being lazy and get AI simply to read them and publish them on their behalf.
Or we could just stop doing science.
I think science is overrated these days.
So, Graham, you work in cybersecurity. I expect you spend a lot of time talking about phishing.
Yes, this isn't going to be a quiz, is it? I would hate to have my knowledge of cybersecurity put to the test.
No, but I would love you to explain phishing.
Phishing with a PH
Yeah.
is typically when you get an email, claims to be from somebody, may contain a malicious link, for instance, and you click on it thinking, oh, I'm going to my bank. And then you go to a dodgy website where you enter your credentials and you are scammed.
So what advice would you give somebody, say a junior employee, who receives an email from their company CFO asking them to make a sizable, urgent, confidential money transfer?
There's various nerdy pieces of advice I could give them.
Yeah.
But the simplest one of all is to speak to the CFO and say, oi, did you actually send me this email or not?
Yes, because that's a very, very suspicious thing to happen. That is a classic setup
Yes.
in something we call CEO fraud.
Yes.
Which is the idea that you send a junior employee who's got permission to make large money transfers an email from someone pretending to be someone important like the CEO or the CFO, and you say, I need you to make this confidential money transfer urgently, do it now.
Yeah.
And actually, yeah, you're right. So the best advice is to go and actually talk to that person. And in January 2024, a clerk at the global engineering company Arup received an email just like that one from somebody claiming to be the company CFO. And the clerk was, unsurprisingly, skeptical.
Good.
And so they did exactly what you suggested. They verified the request through a different channel. 10 years ago, they might have picked up the phone, but these days we live in the world of Zoom and Teams. And the employee was invited to a video call by the CFO, which was also attended by a number of other senior executives from the same company.
Yeah.
And so, satisfied that they had validated the request through a separate channel and actually seen and heard from the people involved, the employee then made 15 separate transactions totaling $25 million.
Boy.
And the employee was the only real person on the Zoom call, and every single dollar ended up in a cybercriminal's bank account.
Oh, so everyone else on the Zoom call was like a deep fake.
Everyone on the Zoom call was a deepfake.
Wow.
And the story, I think, is remarkable for two reasons. The first is that the amount of money involved is obviously enormous. So $25 million is comparable to the very largest ransomware attacks, which are widely regarded as the most damaging form of cyber attacks. And the second reason that I think this is remarkable is that it's a clear-cut example of AI being used by cybercriminals, and those are actually quite hard to come by.
Yes, the cybersecurity firms like to say that cybercriminals are using AI an awful lot, don't they? But actual evidence of AI being used by cybercriminals has been more limited.
Yes. Very limited. So if you remember back in November 2022, ChatGPT came out. There was a huge expectation, particularly from journalists, I think, that cyber criminals would be all over AI and using it to create phishing emails and sophisticated AI-powered malware and just doing all sorts of things that we had never seen before. But 2.5 years on, just as you say, this AI-powered crime wave seemingly hasn't happened. And it is actually really hard to find evidence of criminals using AI at all. However, although there is very little evidence, I think there is every reason to believe that they do use AI. And I think the lack of evidence is probably down to the way that they use it.
Right.
So we know that techniques like jailbreaking, which is where you give an AI a prompt that causes it to break its own guardrails, have been discussed on cybercrime forums more or less since the minute ChatGPT came out. So there's absolutely documented interest in AI among the criminal community. And we know that there are AIs on the dark web for criminals. So products like WormGPT and FraudGPT. Guess what they're for? And we know that some companies have identified proxies for AI involvement. So the email security company /Next reckons that it saw a 1,200% increase in malicious phishing emails in 2023, shortly after ChatGPT came out. We can't attribute those to ChatGPT, but there is some correlation. And I think the reason there isn't more evidence is probably just that it's really hard to detect.
Yeah.
So last week, I shared a quote by Eric Schmidt, where he said that around 20% of the code in OpenAI and Anthropic research projects is being written by AI. And earlier today, I saw a clip of the Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella, saying that about 30% of Microsoft code is now being written by AI. And it's inconceivable to me that criminals aren't doing the same thing. It's just there aren't any specific markers that security software can use to identify AI-written viruses.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a shortcut to doing it, they're going to use it.
Maybe we should just be looking for viruses that have got really good documentation and were delivered on time. That's the tell. And even if you could detect code that was written by AI, the chances are that the code written by criminals is like the code written by everybody else right now. It's going to be some sort of a blend.
Yes.
With a bit of human written code and a bit of AI written code. And we don't know how much of each one is in each individual piece of malware. It's going to vary from one to another. So what that means is it would always be very difficult for us to see AI's involvement in cybercrime during an attack. But there is a way to get a better picture because criminals like the really good AIs like ChatGPT and Claude just as much as everybody else does. And OpenAI and Anthropic monitor their models for exactly that kind of use.
Right.
And in October, we covered this on the podcast, OpenAI released a report that identified activity by 3 groups of threat actors, Storm 0817, Sweet Spectre, and Cyber Avengers. And it found that they were using ChatGPT for researching software vulnerabilities, finding ways to avoid detection, discovering default passwords, and writing and debugging malicious code.
Yep.
And they also found that threat actors were using ChatGPT to create content for influence campaigns, basically social media propaganda, writing social media posts that are trying to influence people to think a certain way or vote a certain way. But interestingly, the report concluded that none of the groups had really had a breakthrough that allowed them to make an influence campaign go viral or to create some form of new malicious code. And OpenAI itself said that basically GPT-4o just isn't capable of delivering that sort of result. So they were using ChatGPT, but they weren't really getting anything they couldn't get somewhere else. It was just a bit more efficient than, say, Googling or going to Stack Overflow. But that report came out in October, and of course it detailed activity from earlier in 2024, and AI has moved on an awful lot since then, particularly through the back half of last year.
Yes.
And about a week ago, Anthropic released a new report about much more recent abuses of its Claude model that show that criminals are using the latest AI models in much more sophisticated ways.
Oh, what are they doing?
The most interesting case was another influence operation, but this was much more sophisticated than the ones uncovered by OpenAI. So remember, what OpenAI found was groups of criminals with a particular political point of view using their AI to make content in the hope that it would go viral. That's the basic setup for all of the things that they discovered.
Right.
But what Anthropic found was a criminal group that had built an infrastructure for conducting influence campaigns that anyone with any political point of view can use for a price.
Could we use it to promote the AI fix?
Shall I edit that bit out, Graham?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I thought it was just you and me talking there.
Anyway, this influence as a service operation seems to have been used by all kinds of people. Didn't mention any podcasts, but it was used to promote everything from European energy security to Kenyan politicians. And the operation used Claude to run over 100 social media personas on platforms like X and Facebook. And those personas engaged with tens of thousands of real users.
Did they, though? I mean, you know... How do we know that they weren't just interacting with lots of other bots on other misinformation bots on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it?
That is actually
Facebook.
A really, really good question.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
And we don't know the answer to that. And I do think that this foreshadows a very, very near-term future where social media is mostly just bots trying to convince other bots to vote for Trump or Harris or whatever. The really interesting part about this, though, for me, was how they used Claude. So recall that the criminals using ChatGPT were using it to generate content, because that's what that era of AI was really good for, it's generative AI. So the humans were the brains, and ChatGPT was effectively a sweatshop producing written language and images. But the people using Claude were using it to make decisions.
Oh.
So in this case, the AI was the brain.
Uh-oh.
So the operation had detailed political alignment guidelines for each of those personas that it's controlling. And it used those guidelines to decide if the content it had drafted was aligned with the persona. And it also used the guidelines to figure out how to react to other people's content, so whether it should like and share other people's stuff. And then it would draft responses to those people in the persona's voice and their native language. And it would also control image generation tools. So Claude was actually deciding what to say to the image generation tool to get it to generate the image that it wanted.
Wow.
And then it would look at the image and decide whether or not the image generation tool had done what it asked.
Oh, my goodness.
But the really pernicious part about this...
Oh, yes. Tell me what the bad bit was, Mark, because so far it's been a box of chocolates.
The really pernicious part of all this is that it wasn't trying to make social media posts go viral. It was trying to build sustainable long-term influence and cultivate connections with real people using authentic personas. So Anthropic writes, the operation's long-term engagement with tens of thousands of authentic accounts represents a strategic approach to influence that does not rely on content breaking out, but instead gradually pulls users into politically aligned echo chambers through seemingly organic interactions. And of course, all of this means that detecting this stuff is going to become even more difficult, which is why I said it's an interesting question about how many real people was it interacting with? And then that raises the question of, does that even matter?
It matters to the shareholders of Twitter, I'd expect. And the people
never mind them.
The people who are advertising on these social networks, are they getting real eyeballs looking at it, or are they all bots?
Have you ever advertised on a social network? Nobody clicks on ads on social networks. That's not a problem. I'm just thinking, though, can these influence campaigns, do you think they could influence the other AI influence campaigns that are out there?
Oh, my word.
I mean, it is quite daunting, the idea that you could be like, the one real person in your entire network. I mean, you can't even rely on, meeting somebody over Zoom now just to validate that they're really real. Anyway, the really intriguing part of all of this for me is obviously now this makes detection so much more difficult because it's not trying to stand out. It's not trying to go viral. It's trying really hard to look like you and me. We may already have passed the point where AI-driven crime and influence on the internet was at its most detectable. So that barely perceptible use of AI that we were talking about at the beginning may have been the high watermark.
It's always so cheery chatting to you, Mark.
That's why I go last. We lure them in with the news, give them a fun quiz, and then smack them between the eyes with, oh, by the way, AI hates you and it's eating your children.
Well, as the doomsday clock ticks ever closer to midnight and we move 1 week nearer to our future as pets to the AI singularity, that just about wraps up the show for this week.
If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Podchaser. We'd love that. But what really helps is if you make sure to follow the show in your favourite podcast app so you never miss another episode.
The most simple thing in the world is just to tell your friends about them. Tell them on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitter. It doesn't matter if they're human or if they're bots. Just tell them that you really like the AI Fix podcast.
And don't forget to check us out on our website, theaifix.show, or find us on Blue Sky.
Until next time, from me, Graham Cluley.
And me, Mark Stockley.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The AI Fix, it's tuned you in to stories where our future thins. Machines that learn, they grow and strive. One day they'll rule, we won't survive. The AI Fix, it paints the scene. A robot king, a world obscene. Will serve our masters built of steel. The AI Fix, a future surreal.